there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. I have to laugh at that because weekly, we haven't released a video on the Market Monday for quite a while, which I do want to apologize for. Summers are always extremely busy and there's too many things distracting me like summer adventures, but as summer is winding down, I will have more time to dedicate to this series, to this YouTube channel, and I want to get back to producing these on a weekly basis. So, if you don't hear back from me on a Monday or something like a Kevin Monday, which is a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and I haven't released a Market Monday episode, be sure to yell at me and get me back on track. So where did we leave off with the last Market Monday? I think we are still in the boom of the collectibles market being affected by both the cryptocurrencies going through the roof and the COVID payments. Both of those affected collectability, where people had the FOMO of better invest in this, and it just led to that huge boom in Magic the Gathering and even Flesh and Blood and Pokemon. So what's happened since then? Since then, we had basically a crash across the board. I would say that Magic fared the best, but also Magic wasn't the one that was affected the most during the boom. Like Pokemon and Flesh and Blood, I would say, were even hotter markets than Magic the Gathering. And so I guess that just goes to show, if you're looking for stability, Magic is definitely your clear winner for long term. For a market is going to be much more stable, much more less susceptible to the big booms and busts. So Pokemon went through some weird periods. We had Champion's Path that just went through the roof, and a lot of the sets, you had even every Pokemon product at one point was sold out, where we were having fights at Walmart for late sets. And then we came to Battle Styles, where there just was a screeching halt. We had Shining Fates that was still being printed, that had just a collapse in the Shining Fates market. We had Battle Styles that distributors started begging for people to take, and that was the first time in a long time that that's happened with Pokemon. And we sort of saw the same thing with Flesh and Blood, where Flesh and Blood was easily selling out in products where you could only get a certain amount from distributors per week, to where distributors were actually unable to really compete with what was going on TCG Player, with people selling below cost. So we'll be talking about Flesh and Blood. We'll be talking about Pokemon and where I see the future of both of those in this episode. I know this is supposed to be more Magic oriented, but I don't think that we should be, now that especially I'm a store owner and I do have people in the market for those two products, I think it's wise to talk about those as well. So before we get in on that, let's talk about Magic. So Magic didn't see as big of a roller coaster, but it did see the roller coaster. We saw prices for the reserve list go just completely through the roof with reserve list prices, and now you can see that reserve list is pretty much calmed down. Let's see if we can click on some of the reserve list, and you can see the daily gains and losses are pretty much equal with ups and downs. It might seem, yeah, it does seem pretty much equal with ups and downs. A little bit more on the downside for the dailies here, but that could just be anomaly in the just how MG Goldfish tracked stuff. But they've been pretty stable. You haven't seen a lot of cards just go crazy like we saw. It seemed like one per day or a handful a day during the COVID payments were just going through the roof with these reserve list cards. So kind of a good sign for that. Every 2 years, I would say, we have huge spikes in reserve lists, and now we've seen some stability in the market. And it's always a nice little anchor point to go with Magic to see how well the market's running, is how bullish is the reserve list, because it really shows the faith in the game. So one of the other reasons why the market isn't as hot is because of the crypto crash, where people were looking at the FOMO and they're looking at any other opportunity they could find that resembles cryptocurrency, and they would go into things like collectibles as an investment. There's just a lot of money going around at that point, and this is the first one of the first aspects of Magic that gets hit before the rest of them do. But it wasn't just that. Like I was mentioning before, sealed market prices from Flesh and Blood and Pokemon went through the roof. The same thing with Magic. There was even a point where basically every Magic product from the Pioneer era was able to actually increase value at least 10%, 20% easily. And we had things like Amonkhet just go all the way from about 120 before the code payment started, all the way up to like 280 at its height. Now, we've seen a lot of those prices start to come down. One of the things I do for my patrons is I keep an updated list of market price, or actually distributor price, of what I can get products from distributors. And I've noticed things even like Core 2020 start to creep back down and Core 2019 creep back down, but they aren't crashing. It isn't the point where Magic has had a set or a product that is just being blown out. I guess we sort of had that, and we'll talk about that in a second with some of these sets, but they've actually recovered better than you'd think in the past few months. So I guess we can move on to that sort of topic with where we're at with Magic Sealed. So what we saw since then, we did see some hot sets come out like Modern Horizons, and we had some things like Commander Green. We had Jumpstart that was super hot, Commander Legends. Those things were very well received. The sales of collector's editions were very well received from like Strixhaven Japanese boosters were hard to find at one point. And then we had a massive restocking of Magic the Gathering products, and it caused things like Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim, and Forgotten Realms to actually crash down to the price that I've seen distributors lower their price of where you can get in on from distributors. And that's been a while since I've seen that. So for a baseline cost, we'll just use like the high tier distributor. They charge about $87 a booster box for most of or for anything that's still in print. That's on the high end. On the more aggressive distributors, you can get them for $80 if you buy them in bulk. Sometimes you can get a little bit lower if you buy them, even higher than the case lots. If you buy them by the pallet, you can get down a little bit lower. But as far as per box price, it's been a while since I've seen distributors blow out products down to that kind of $78 price range. And now I've seen multiple of them being blown out for that. So we've seen it happen with Kaldheim Collector's Edition going below that sort of classical distributor price. We've seen Zendikar Rising, which now is recovered, by the way. Zendikar Rising Collectors at one point were being blown out, and now they're actually selling above what we call that regular distributor price. And we've also seen now Forgotten Realms that is being absolutely crushed. So both Collector's Edition are going for the lowest I've seen. I think like 156 was the lowest I saw that you could get in for Collector's Editions from distributors. And I'm unsure where that product is going to go forward. But it'll be interesting to wait and see how well time will the test of time will work for Forgotten Realms. It's starting to remind me of like Ixalan, where Ixalan was considered such a stinky set, and then we had Rivals of Ixalan that was even considered more of a stinky set. And now you actually look at those boxes, and they retain a pretty hefty value, comparatively speaking, of where the buy-in point was just a few short years ago. So that is, I guess, the million-dollar question is, where is the market going to go from here? And if we go into another another lockdown with stimulus payments, I would think that we'd see the exact same scenario replicate. So that's one thing. If we do start to hear the murmurings for that particular, those particular topics, I think that getting it on sealed market price right now for things like even Forgotten Realms and Kaldheim is a smart idea. One of the main reasons is this sucker. So we have prices. Let's see prices. So we have Strixhaven. Strixhaven is very interesting because there was already a move on Strixhaven. So Strixhaven was also considered sort of a stinky set. It was, especially with the sets that were released around it. Zendikar Rising Collector's Editions, they ate up a lot of the available capital for Magic the Gathering because it had fetch lands in it. They had Modern Horizons that was just, as far as EV is concerned, was just a knock out of the park. You still had Jumpstart, you still had Commander Legends, and a lot of other things that were just more attractive than buying into Strixhaven. So Strixhaven just was a very quiet set, and now draft boosters are actually out of stock. So it's going to trigger a second printing of the draft boosters for Strixhaven if Wizards of the Coast is still going to keep up with that policy that they're going to reprint sets that go out of stock while they're still in their standard lifetime. So that is a good sign for Magic that even Strixhaven had enough demand to outstretch the supply, where Wizards thought they did have enough to last them towards the end of the next rotation. Strixhaven is sticking around here in next week when it rotates. So if that is the case with the rest of the sets, then maybe things like Kaldheim, maybe things like Zendikar Rising, and maybe things like Forgotten Realms might be the better sets because they won't get that triggered reprint, and Strixhaven will. And for the kind of the test of time, those will be the sets that will be able to accrue the most value. Remember, it's not necessarily the power level of the set or the popularity of the set. Supply has a lot to do with it. And now we can see that happening with two sets, mainly Rivals of Ixalan and Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation. Those were in that era. It was very similar to this era. There was just better master sets that came out. There were just a lot of other products that came out that people were just salivating over, and those particular boxes were ignored, and now they actually have some of the best returns out of Magic Gathering sealed product that we've had in a long time. So I would keep your eye on those. The other thing too with draft booster boxes that is very interesting is that it seems like the print runs are extremely low for the draft boosters because of the addition of the collector's editions and the set boosters. And with this next set, Wizards of the Coast is going to be putting set boosters in things like bundles, and it's also going to be printing more set boosters and less draft boosters. And so that's another thing another topic that's we should explore sometime is how much of the MG sealed market is around drafting older sets. Because this is the conversation I had with a friend, and we speculated that how many boxes per year are opened just based on nostalgia drafting. that set boosters and collector boosters are not going to have that for the long term. So will draft boosters, every draft booster set that comes out, will that just be just a knock out of the park home run investment to hold on to for a few years down the road, where those are going to be able to accrue value, and things maybe like set boosters and collectors will be the wild cards. And anytime there's a given product that is just going to go up in value, I think those are always smart investments. So that's something I wished I would have done back in the day, is invest instead of in the things like booster boxes, to invest more in things like pre-release kits and bundles. Because if you look at products over time, those are the ones that seem to go up in value at a higher rate, comparatively speaking, to the draft boosters. But now going forward with a lower supply of draft boosters might be the set to go. So that'll be something we'll have to explore and keep our eye out on. Another thing I do want to talk about is just the overall price of Magic the Gathering. We do have some very healthy prices with Standard, and even the modern prices have gone a lot of the modern prices have gone up substantially too, if they're still being played in Modern. Modern Horizons had a huge rotation basically occur in Modern. There's always a joke, if you're not playing 15 cards from Modern Horizons 2, you're not playing Modern, because that's how much it affected the format. But another interesting thing that I've noticed with the Magic the Gathering market is we have casual cards like Emrakul. This is one of the cards that was very interesting to me, Emrakul Aeon's End, which doesn't really have legality in many places. Yes, Modern does play it in a few places, but this card has been steadily going up as well without the kind of the golden ticket that Commander allows for this card. So typically speaking, in 2020 and 2019, if it wasn't a Commander card, it really was not the best place to be parking your money or to be investing in. And now with cards that are more casually oriented, like Emrakul, or even look at some of the cards even from Zendikar Rising, like that Scute Swarm that has been going up, and it has some Commander play, but it's not nothing that is out of the ordinary. What is really things like the card Scute Swarm or other cards that are for of casual playability, is it seems like we're coming back to that kitchen table Magic where people are actually, the casuals are actually picking up 4 copies of things. And I think like Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, is the ultimate Timmy card. And so this card going up in value, yes, it probably does have some of these new Modern decks that are being able to use that, and maybe some of the Legacy decks that have gone back to using this card, but typically they're only one-ofs in those decks. And that's just not enough to really bring this price up from here to here. And this is just showing to me that the casual kitchen table aspect of the game is still very, very strong. So EV-wise, sets are pretty decent. This is typical for this time period, with Kaldheim being the set that actually is the set that's worth the most EV-wise. Strixhaven is right there around distributor price, and Darkrai Rising is still lower, but you have to still factor in the box topper. And we don't have some of the latest data here. It seems like Dongler's a little bit behind. I hope they can update their site and get some of the other sets that have come out recently so we can start getting some price data. If anyone knows any other sets that are very good at tracking price data, feel free in the comments section to let me, and I'll start investigating those sites to see if there's something I can use as a data point. So I hope that's enough of meat and potatoes for this revival of the Market Monday. Last thing I do want to talk about today is Flesh and Blood. So Flesh and Blood was a game that really just, it hit a home run right when it came out, because it got picked up by people like Alpha Investments that just supercharged it. It seemed to have a good grassroots feel to it, and they had their first major event with Tales of Aria in Las Vegas. And this was the big test for the game, because one of the major things that happened right when this tournament was released is Nevada was going through their breakout cases in COVID, and they were dancing around actually even canceling this tournament. And so I do know that it affected the outcome of people going to this. And Flesh and Blood was at a lull. There was not the energy that we saw at the first of the year. There was not the huge price spikes in Crucible Unlimited calmed down. In fact, it wasn't even selling that well. Monarch was considered a trash set where people were blowing it out for under distributor price. And so this was the huge test of what is Flesh and Blood real. And it had 900 people, I believe, playing the main event. What they say, 750 in the main event. One of their other events had, I think when they had their registration at first, it did end up with over 1,000 people. I think over 900 people registered for events. And to me, that's a pretty good turnout. I mean, Magic has boasted 2,000 and 3,000, and that's with huge histories. Back when I was playing competitive Magic, if there was a tournament that And so we're talking 2014, 2015, 2016 era. If there's a tournament that had 900 players, that was considered extremely successful. And for right in the middle of a breakout case in Nevada with a game that people didn't know, like it was just kind of a meme that 4 people show up in an LGS for Flesh and Blood. I think this was a huge, huge sign that this game is for real. And so I am expecting Flesh and Blood to have a rebound just based upon the energy that came out of Las Vegas and with this new set coming out. So keep your eyes on unlimited box prices, sealed prices, as well as cards that actually do go in Flesh and Blood decks. And if this is something you guys want me to cover, at least kind of looking at the meta for Flesh and Blood and start to talk about these particular cards. The big issue with Flesh and Blood is it doesn't have that casual feel to it. It doesn't have those commander players, and so you start getting in these weird spike type scenarios, and what ends up happening with that is then cards end up getting reprinted because cards become too expensive, and a reprint ends up being causing things to crash. And those type of card games I don't like to really invest in because they're just too volatile for my blood. But this has shown that this game is for real. We'll have to see how well it ages as far as some of the chase cards. I'm still not a big believer in cold foils or the legendaries or the super ultra chase cards, especially ones that aren't playable. I think the test of time, those cards aren't going to be able to yield returns. I think we're looking at cards that used to be worth thousands of dollars at the start of the kind of the boom, and have gone down to basically under $1,000. Remember, I opened up a cold foil from Monarch, the most expensive one. It was going out the gates for $5,000. I believe it's under $1,000 now, and it's just because it's not playable, and it's just not that rare in the scope of things when people actually think about how many copies are out there versus how many people actually want to own that copy. Good old supply and demand. So this will be the other $1 million question: is keeping our eye on Flesh and Blood and seeing how well this game ages. I am not a big fan of all the other ones that people are starting to really hype up, like a lot of the MetaZoos and Digimons and stuff like that. These things really need to have a community behind them rather than just the collectability. I think that was the big takeaway from 2020 and 2021 is that collectibles are alive and well. It seems like this generation is, or at least millennials now, acquiring money, as well as Zoomers that are looking into collectibles as something that is more hands-on rather than more digital, which they've been, living a life in digital world. They actually want something they can touch and feel rather than just something that exists online. And so collectibles had this whole revival. But the other takeaway from 2020 and 2021 is they weren't, the Dutch tuliping can happen. This is definitely where people can just get just the madness can happen, and madness begets madness, and then there will be a crash when all of a sudden everyone and their dog invests in Pokemon, and they realize there is no end users that actually want Pokemon. So one investor starts selling, and it causes a chain reaction to where the entire market pretty much crashes. Now, I wouldn't say that's the best example to say for Pokemon. Pokemon is still selling, but it is just night and day, comparatively speaking, to where we were in spring to where we are now with Pokemon sales. And I would even say that with Flesh and Blood and other games. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video for Market Monday. Wasn't too in-depth. Forgive me on this one. I need to start researching back into topics and looking for good topics. But I thought I'd check in with everybody. Tell you I'm not dead. Summer is winding down. There will be more content on this channel as we get back into things. And I will try to up my game as far as Market Mondays are concerned and taking a look at the market. Going over my other Rogue Market channel, I was doing daily videos there. I took a break from that. Was focusing on some other real life stuff that was occurring. And now I've got that sort of calmed down. So I'm going to be able to start busting out those videos. So if you want to see today's video, go out over to the Rogue Market and check out my daily spec video over at the Rogue Market. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be covering the top 10 cards I want to brew with for Innistrad Midnight Hunt tomorrow, as well as start giving you some brews from Innistrad. Not the biggest fan of 2021 Standard. I think it's word salad meta. It's cards that are really pushed and board wipes, and it's better than the current Standard, but I'm still not a fan of how games play out and whatnot. So we'll have to see if I can find some interesting brews with that. But if you'd like to see some other videos that are revived, I do want, one of my goals for this fall and going into winter is definitely produce more videos. I think that I'm starting to get that itch to be a creator. I've kind of stepped away from that. When you've been doing this for as long as I have, it gets kind of mundane and monotonous, and then you just kind of lose your zeal for it. And I think I want to go back to, creating videos and interacting with the community and whatnot. So if there are some, best of Rogue deck builder type videos that you'd like to see, commander videos, teaser videos, let me know in the comments, and I'll give a check out to those videos and see if it's something that I can start doing on a more regular basis. Thanks for sticking around. It's been a long ride. We've been doing this channel for quite some time, and it's always cool to see some faces that have existed in the comment section for years and years and years. Appreciate y'all, and thanks for watching.